Hello everyone, you're joining us once more for the Roker Rapport. With me tonight we have James. How are you, buddy?
I'm alright, mate, I'm alright.
Alright, feeling good. What about
Yeah.
Gav, how's things?
Mint.
Oh!
Merry Christmas. No.
Now, we do have Tom, but because the original's off globetrotting somewhere, we have a Tom impersonator with us tonight. So Tom, welcome to the show. How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for that introduction.
That's alright, mate. Anything for you. And also, we're joined by Simon, who's also new to the show. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. It's good to be on the show.
Good times, good times. Right, well, small talk being over. Today finds us third from bottom after a victory over Watford. Nothing flash, but still in the game, still very much in the season, in contention. Gav, what did you take from Saturday? Are we steadily improving?
Not necessarily. I wouldn't say it was an improvement. I would say that it was more the type of victory that we need to start producing, if that makes any sense. Like, we can't just win whole 3-0. Sometimes we've got to beat Watfords and teams like that and very scrappily and scrape the result, and that's what we did. It wasn't a sterling performance by any stretch. But if you're going to stay up, you need a couple of scruffy wins, especially this time of year, because with the fixture congestion and the amount of teams, basically pretty much every team in this league outside of Chelsea are inconsistent. So the more of these type of victories we can get, the better, because we've got 3 hard games coming up, and it was a solid performance. Really, you can't complain. I get a clean sheet. You can't complain at players like Djilobodji and Januzaj and Love standing out. There's pretty much nothing negative to take from that result, really, other than the fact that maybe saying that Love picked up a bit cramp at the end, but other than that, I can't really think of anything negative. It was a pretty straightforward result, and the type that you need going into the next game, because I know it's the game after Christmas and you never know what's going to happen. Typically with Sunderland, we're useless around Christmas, but Manchester United are going to be no mean feat. So they've played quite well recently, so I'm just, I don't know. I'm pretty happy that we've got the 3 points, because it just takes the pressure off for that game. And I think that Moyes is starting to show his nasty side. He's starting to do things which maybe don't resonate with the fans, such as taking off Januzaj for O'Shea when we look like we're about to score the second goal. That was pretty unpopular, but you have to give him credit. We saw the game out and we got the clean sheet and the win, so no complaints from me.
Yeah, I thought it's a huge win, really, isn't it? I mean, we fully deserved it, in my opinion. I thought we were much the better team in the second half. Watford had obviously started the game pretty well, but we defended resolutely. I thought, as you said, Djilobodji was just brilliant again. He looks a man possessed. I thought Kone again is starting to look the player that he was last season. Donald Love was solid. Patrick Van Aanholt's class going forward. He really is. He's such a threat when he runs from deep. I mean, Pickford made a good save early on in the first half. A slight negative would be we did give away a lot of cheap free kicks at times. I thought, had Watford maybe been a bit better in the air, we very easily could have gone 1-0 down in that first half. But we didn't. We seemed to stay strong and battle through. Adnan Januzaj looks a completely different player to me. I have absolutely slated him pretty much every week. Yeah. And he looked really dangerous, didn't he, in that second half? The way he beats his man, and the first thought in his mind is to push forward and look for that killer pass, and played a really big part in the goal. As did Jermaine Defoe. I thought Defoe's performance was just a all-around great team performance. He wasn't his usual predatorial self, but he set Van Aanholt up and he worked his arse off. Van Aanholt's finish was that of a striker. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. To hit that first time on the turn, I thought full fair play to him.
Yeah. Well, it was very melodramatic the way it bounced off the post and went in. It certainly added to the lustre of the goal. I mean,
yeah.
You're talking about Januzaj there. We've got some Twitter questions as usual. I'll give one to Tom to start him off. This one's from Jonathan Hawley, and he's saying, is this a turning point for Januzaj, or do we still send him back in January? Now, before you answer, Tom, and everyone, in fact, I want you to bear in mind that he's only got one game left for us, technically. If we were going to send him back in January, he'd only have one game left for us, because obviously bearing in mind we're playing Man U and he can't play against them. So what would you make of that, Tom? Do you think we should still send him back based on Saturday's performance?
Well, it's nice to see he's actually finally improving, and it's something that we wanted to see from him for a while. I'd never send him back because we're limited as it is, and there's no point of sending a player who you know has got this quality in him to send him back when we've only really seen about 2-3 games out of him. Chelsea seemed a bit more the player that you expected in the first place. You know, hassling defences and whatnot. He had probably our best 2 chances against Chelsea. And then the Watford game is more, he's coming into his own, he's getting a bit more involved in the game. And first half, again, he was a bit anonymous. But the second half, he was running the show at times, and the Watford defenders didn't really know what to do with him. And it's nice to have that extra prong in the attack where we don't have to just keep relying on pumping it up to Anichebe and laying off a Defoe. That we've got some form of attacking midfielder. I mean, I wouldn't say the turning point is like the next big thing, but I just think it'd be really naive to send a player we all know he's got that quality to send him back in January. I wouldn't see what the point would be.
Yeah, I thought what he adds is like that unpredictable element, doesn't he? He has that moment in him that can change a game. Obviously, he's been so frustrating, and I think actually that comes down to his body language more than anything. I know that really frustrates me, the way he looks like he sulks at all moments, but then he can turn it on. To be honest, he actually kind of reminds me of Adam Johnson at times in the way he moves with the ball. I know we shouldn't really mention him; he's like Voldemort, isn't he? But it's nice to have someone who can maybe turn a game on his head. Because as much as I love Fabio Borini, I'm not quite sure he has that in him right now.
Well, would you say when you said about sulking, you see that with players like Defoe? You see when he's not getting the passes, he's like throwing his arms up and stuff like that. I wouldn't say it's just Januzaj. I think the issue with Januzaj has been there's been this weird perception of him that he's going to be this like Messi as soon as we got him, and because he's not delivering like that, and people are a bit too quick to write players off.
Maybe I think maybe like it's maybe because of what happened at Dortmund as well, because obviously they sent him back because of his attitude, and obviously we've known of this almost sense of entitlement he seems to have. Let's not count the chickens. Let's hope he can continue. He's had 2 decent matches. I think, was it against Chelsea? He was caught out a few times defensively in the first half. So I think Moyes playing him in more of a central role, certainly the right move.
It definitely was in that sense. I mean, the thing with Januzaj is, as long as he's in a position where the ball can be got to him regularly, he's very effective. He's kind of like a player who, if he goes off the grid for 20 minutes in one half, that's it. You're not going to see him for the rest of the game. He doesn't do anything else afterwards. But if you put him in a position where he can contribute positively to the game, then you've got a good player there. And that's something which I thought we saw against Watford, probably for the first time in a while there.
Absolutely, I'd agree with you. It's easy, as Tom said, it's easy to write off players for little errors and things like that. But I think the main argument we had against Januzaj was his lack of work ethic. I mean, and as James said, he's put in 2 good performances so far. I haven't got the stats in front of me. I'm not sure how many games he's featured in actually since we got him. But 2 performances. I mean, we obviously, as you say as well, Simon, don't want to. Sorry, it wasn't Simon. It was James. Don't want to count our chickens. We don't know if he's going to put in another good performance. If that's just sort of like a turning point for Januzaj, or if it's just a flash in the pan sort of thing. But
one of the questions I would say would be if maybe we can get a performance out of him 1 in 2 or 1 in 3, do you think that's enough to keep him in the starting 11? he's not going to be the kind of man who's going to turn up and give you 7 out of 10 every week. I certainly don't think he's that. But he might give you an 8 out of 10.
I wouldn't give him a starting berth like that. I don't think he's earned it just off the back of that one game, as you say, sort of thing. I mean, if we can be brought on as a substitute, for example, as I said, if for some reason we were going to send him back, which I can't see happening, Burnley would effectively be his last game for us. If he was to pull something, if he was to be able to come on at half time or come on at 60, more typically 60, 70 minutes with Moyes, that's the sort of time he seems to make his substitutions, then yeah, that'd be great if you come against Burnley and put in the same kind of performance. I don't know, what do you make of him, Gav?
I think it's important really that we acknowledge the role he played as well. He played as a number 10. We haven't played with one of those really all season, have we? I know he did drift to the right and he interchanged with Barini a lot, but importantly, we played with a 10. And when you look at January and you look at the amount of midfielders we're going to be missing, and Dong is going to the African Cup of Nations, for instance, then you're going to have, you've still got 3-4 players who play central midfield who are injured. So David Moyes has got a bit of a conundrum, really. He's got to work out a way of getting a team on the pitch who don't necessarily rely upon having 3 central midfielders, which is, in effect, the kind of team we played the other day. We had Januzaj sitting in that hole behind the strikers, drifting across to the right with Barini whenever he was needed. And going through January, we're going to need pretty much him and Barini to do the same job, because once Ndong shoots off to Gabon, and you consider the fact that Pinar's struggling a little bit, and you consider the fact that we're probably going to have to play Rodwell.
No, don't.
No.
Sorry, lads, but
Gently forgot about him.
I would, to be honest though, I was glad to see Ethan Robson come on the bench, because he's played quite well for the under-23s this season. He's kind of reaching an age now where he needs to be involved with the first team at least. And although he didn't get on the pitch, he was there. Yeah. So it kind of does show you that Moyes sees something in him, because I know he's been to watch pretty much all of the last 3 or 4 under-23s games, so he's seen enough of them, and he must know whether he's good enough.
What
the problem
kind of
is really
is
introducing him. He likes to sit and pass it from deep. He's similar. I wouldn't say he was anything like Kirchhoff or even Denayer for that fact. I couldn't say he was that standard, but he's a similar type of player. He likes to pick it up deep, and he often gets into shooting positions and he'll pass it sideways. He's not the type of centre midfielder that'll take responsibility, which is quite often what Kirchhoff does. You know what I mean? He is as nice as it is to watch Jan Kirchhoff at times. It would be nice to see him have a shot when he gets into good positions, and that's kind of what Ethan Robson's like. He's very similar. He won't try and penetrate a team, but he'll try and move the ball out of the wide players, which is, I would guess, in this setup is pretty much what we need, because you've got players like Van Aanholt bombing past Anichebe, and it would be nice to have somebody who was adept at getting the ball down the sides to the wide players, because really that's what we're missing. That and a goal scoring midfielder, you know.
I would agree with that, absolutely. I think that sort of team contribution is far more important to us right now when you consider, I mean, if he's going to get the ball to Barini, Defoe and Anichebe, do you know what I mean, or PVA if he's running down flank, then yeah, those are the people we're going to be relying on to actually make something and penetrate the team, as you said. We were talking earlier, we mentioned Papy Djilobodji. Now, I've said this to you lads already, he is fast becoming my favourite centre-back. Compared to what he was, it is...
Not many to choose from, mate.
Yeah, no, that's true. I didn't say Sunderland centre-back. This is just in general. He's fast becoming a favourite with me. He's come on leaps and bounds, it seems, from when we first got him, and we were all looking at him thinking, oh my God, do you know what I mean? What are we dealing with now? Like, what a complete waste of money. I mean, what would you say about him, Simon?
He's a bargain. He always was. But you know my feelings towards him. He's, for the season that he had in the Bundesliga, where he was pretty much the top defender there, at least for half a season. He was outperforming a lot of defenders. I think in comparison, when he was over there, it was very similar to how Kone was for us in his half season. He was that good. But it's just taking him a bit of time to settle in with us, and now that he has, you can start to see what he's all about. He's good in the air at times. But for me, he's by the end of the season, we'll be talking about him possibly being player of the season for us. I genuinely think that.
Fair enough. That's a pretty solid.
It's big praise, right?
Yeah, so we'll remember this one. We'll remember this one and see what happens at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think he's right. He has been like a hell of an improvement in what he started out at, but he still has those odd moments, doesn't he, where he seems to try and get in front of the attacker and tries to win the ball instead of maybe playing the safe option. I wonder if that's going to come back to haunt him in a couple of moments going into January. When will we lose him for the African nations? I think because Senegal might call him up. Will it? Have they qualified? Does anyone know?
Yeah, they qualified, but he had a falling out with the coach about a year ago, and he hasn't been back in the squad.
Watching.
But when you look at the centre halves that Senegal have available, he'd walk in that team. Like they've got Koulibaly, who plays for Napoli,
he's class.
He was being touted for like 55 million to Chelsea in the summer.
Uh-huh.
Beyond him, there's nobody. They've got Gassama, who's a right back by trade, who was linked with us actually last year. He's playing in Turkey, and a couple of other names which I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But he would walk in that team. Like I would be pretty confident of that. They've got Kouyaté, who plays for West Ham, but he's a centre midfielder these days. But he can play at the back, and you would think that anyone with half a brain would be looking at him now, like and thinking I've got to get him in the squad if we're going to have a chance of winning this, because he's a quality player. He is. You can see by the way he carries out the ball, and you can see by the way that when he has it at his feet, he doesn't look to be safe. And I don't necessarily think it's always the right, but I have no issue with a defender trying to take a bit of a risk with the ball, and especially when you've got a player like Anichebe who's adept at holding it up. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. It's just a case of picking your moments. Earlier in the season, he was doing it too often. He was too prone to diving in. He was too prone to trying silly passes, and it was maybe because he just wasn't ready. He does look a bit more ready now, and the problem before with him being more rash and so on, he's definitely developed a partnership with Kone, which is going to see us through, I think. And he's maybe there's still an error in him. There's no doubt about that. But based on the last few weeks, I think losing him in January could be a far bigger blow than losing Kone.
Yeah. Well,
so when you look at January, then that African Cup of Nations we've got. Potentially, correct me if I'm wrong, so we've got Djilobodji, Kone looking likely to miss out. Who the bloody hell are we going to play at centre half? This Kirchhoff looks like he's going to be out injured as well.
Denayer.
Put Rodwell in there.
That's it.
Is he due back soon? Is he?
What's your problem? Yeah, is Rodwell due back?
To be honest, I think he's still got a couple of weeks till he's back. But if we're seriously getting to the point where we want to be playing Jack Rodwell at centre half, that's disastrous. That.
Well, the joke.
But let's ignore the doom and gloom of whether we lose him or not. Would it be easy to say that that's sort of the ability that he's got now, or rather the experience that he's showing, that we didn't seem to see from him for the first few matches, certainly, it allows Patrick Van Aanholt that sort of freedom to roam forward, also a little bit more comfort and security. Obviously, we're still going to need a central midfield to drop back if PVO goes forward. But what do you think about that sort of link-up on the left, Gav? Do you think that allows for it?
I absolutely love the link up down the left. I said a couple of weeks ago, I think it was after the Swansea game, when Anichebe had played most of the game on the right and would played like a 4-4-2, that Moyes couldn't afford to do that again. He couldn't afford to make another mistake like that, because Anichebe's link up with Van Aanholt is arguably our brightest spark. It's our best attacking outlet. So Saturday, for instance, when Van Aanholt was getting so much room down the right-hand side, it wasn't necessarily because Watford were playing with three across the middle and they had a wing-back effectively who was meant to be tracking him. It was mainly because Anichebe was pushing up against two defenders, which was dragging one of them out, giving them the freedom of their right-hand side, and he was our best player, for me, going forward. And obviously the goal that he scored, when you look at it back, it's not necessarily from Anichebe where he scores it. It's actually Januzaj to Defoe and then back across to Van Aanholt. But the fact he's able to get into those positions comfortably kind of tells its own story, because players like Denayer and Ndong were just sitting and going across and covering for him. So you have to factor that in. Our whole left side really is the best part of our team, and that's not doing disservice to Defoe, because Defoe benefits from it probably more than anybody, because defenders are trying to occupy Anichebe and Van Aanholt and kind of leaving him in space, which is what happened for our goal. Actually, he got loose on the right, put a great ball into Van Aanholt, who came out of nowhere and turned and scored. We kind of need to be, for me though, we're a little too reliant on those three players. The fact that they're the only three who've scored for us all season tells, again, its own story. We need to, in January, if there is any sort of room for manoeuvre, which I'm sure we'll get on to later, we need to find some midfielder who's able to add goals, because for me we're not doing enough around the pitch. But it becomes worrying when any of those three are removed from the team. And each of you didn't play against Chelsea, and we had absolutely nothing to hit at the front. And then we had obviously the issue against Swansea where we had to shuffle the pack somewhat, which meant Anichebe had to go to one side of the pitch where he wasn't comfortable. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it, but we need to add to it. We can't just rely on those three.
No, absolutely not. I mean, but talking about the midfield as well, obviously we had Jason Denayer. I thought he worked like a horse, to be honest with you. I mean, he was guilty of a couple of rash challenges and things like that, but that was arguably more about the position he was playing in or forced to play in, and the pressure that was on him in that situation. What would you make of Denayer, Tom?
Yeah, again, I thought he improved on. I thought he was a bit rusty against Chelsea. Maybe that's just because he's not been used to playing these full games. Like after Swansea as well, he didn't do very well there. But yeah, now with Kirchhoff, we can't actually rely on him to be fit, and he's nicely filling in that role. He was everywhere on Saturday, and everything he worked. He kind of went round clearing up when Ndong had just given away. But yeah, it's another promising display from a player that has had his doubters and all that. And especially, again, with Kirchhoff, we just can't keep him fit. And I assume I won't be expecting him to stay another season if he carries on this kind of in and out of the team. And I feel a bit more comfortable with Denayer at the moment, because Kirchhoff on against Chelsea, he was just completely wayward, and it was right that getting hauled off after 60 minutes because he can't run anymore. It just pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, I mean, he's also, obviously, we're able to utilise him. I mean, going back to what we were saying about Papy potentially being in the AFCON, indeed Kone potentially being in the AFCON. I mean, obviously, Denayer is also, he's a centre-back, isn't he? So is that the sort of thing that we'd be able to now, or we get more of a grasp of if we'd be able to rely on him as a centre-back again, do you think? What would you say?
Yeah, well, we're going to have limited options come January, so having a player that's got that experience of playing in the back, and I'm sure he played at the back when he played for Celtic and also possibly Galatasaray.
He did.
So
yeah.
he's got that in his locker. Obviously, he got absolutely murdered by Howard Robson-Kanu at the Euros, but as long as we don't come up against him at any point, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, also, still talking about the defence, I suppose. We got Donald Love. We mentioned him earlier. I thought he's getting quite a lot of joy on that right flank. Now, I'm certainly in two minds. Obviously, you've got Javier Manquillo, who comes from is it Atletico Madrid? Is that right? Or am I wrong here? Is it?
Yeah.
He's pedigree. Well, potentially on paper, he's a pedigree player, and he should be a solid right back. His performances have been half-hearted at best, I would say, for us, and he hasn't really stood out. Billy Jones has been fighting tooth and nail for the last month, I would say, and it's great to have him, I would say, as a solid right back. But Donald Love, he seemed to have that pace in him and the ability to cross, or rather the desire to cross, whereas you find that Billy Jones sort of he doesn't so much cross. He tend to still want to cut inside and lay off someone who's running on the right or something like that. But with Donald Love, he seemed to be reining in the crosses, whether they led to anything or not. We obviously need that sort of outlet on the right, as Gav said earlier. We're too focused on our left flank. But I mean, Simon, what would you make of Donald Love? I mean, not just his performance on Saturday, but his performance against Chelsea.
I don't have a problem with how he's been playing. I think he's been good enough or competent enough to do a job for us. To be honest, going forward, I think that not just him, but other players like Mackems, for example, Moyes has really kind of given them a baptism of fire this season by entrusting so many young players into these high responsibilities. Donald Love had a pretty torrid start to that, but just like has happened with Ndong, give him some more time, maybe he'll start getting a bit more praise. And I think we're talking about it there. He's being a lot more positive, and he's putting in some fairly decent performances so far. So right now, I don't see why we shouldn't try and persist a little bit longer with him, get him some more games this season, because come the end of the season we could be looking at a much better player than the one who we brought in at the start.
And it's sort of it might be indicative of Moyes' actual transfer dealings, which is something that we doubted at first. Obviously, when we brought in Mackems, Love, and Ichibi, I think we seem to be getting slowly proven wrong, don't we? Just like as fans, No, what would you say, James, to the idea of Donald Love starting against Man U?
To be honest, I'm all for it. I think, as one of the lads just said there, we weren't overly convinced by the signing of him or Mackems or Djilobodji or Ndong or Denayer, but they're all coming to the forefront now, and I think given them more extended period of time in the starting 11, they're always going to become more comfortable. I mean, as soon as I saw Donald Love's name on the team sheet, I was a bit worried, if I'm honest. I thought he's so inexperienced and he looks a bit lightweight, but he was really solid. He distributed the ball pretty well. He was tough in the tackle. Let's just hope he continues to settle in. I mean, someone mentioned Didier Ndong very briefly before. I think it was Gav who did the match ratings online, and I thought he put it perfectly. He said he's a 10 off the ball, and on the ball he was a 0. And I think that's one thing that David Moyes has to work on this week, to get Didier Ndong to maybe calm himself down a little bit when he's on the ball, because his distribution on Saturday was nothing short of abysmal, in my opinion. Right?
I just want to say that I absolutely love Donald Love. I've loved him ever since he walked in the door. His stupid little face looked like when he got his PE kit on a bit too big for him.
He looked like a lost child in a shopping centre or something.
Yeah. When I saw his name on the t-shirt, I thought, yeah, go on, Donald Love. But he was actually, I was just making a joke at first. I thought he was going to be like this mini cult player, but I thought he was really impressive on Saturday. I thought he might have a bit of torrid time, because they got a few tricky wingers, Watford. I thought they might double up on him. But he was really solid positionally. And then going forward, the second half, when he linked up really well with Januzaj made that cheeky back heel, and he was straight in. And I thought from the end I was sitting there, I thought Ichibi had scored. And it's just that purpose going forward. I don't think Billy Jones... I think Billy Jones has been good since he's come in, but he doesn't give us that kind of like quality across him, and I've not seen any of that from Manquillo. I don't even know if he's going to get back in the team at all, Manquillo. Now that that Love has shown he's a lot of promise for the chance he's got, and also my favourite part of yesterday when he challenged someone and he went out for a goal kick. So I thought that was just brilliant.
He made a great interception in front of Igalo, which kind of didn't really get enough credit for me. If you look at the ball that comes in from the left, Igalo, all he has to do is get a touch on it and it's in the back of the net. Love nips in front of him, and it does just go just wide of the post, but it's enough to stop the shot, really. That was one of the first things he did in the game. After that, he was flying. I think it kind of gave him some confidence, and he grew into it, which was nice to see. I'm like most people, I'm sure the rest of you are, and all lads, we've all wrote players at times this season when maybe it's been unfair. particularly in the early days when we looked canny lost. The last 3-4 home games should give us some hope, at least that there's enough fight in this team, providing they can stay fit. Love being the prime example for me, because we were told Mankio was a great attacking fullback, and I haven't seen it. He doesn't try to get past his man when he's in space. He doesn't want to cross the ball. He's very poor in the tackle, I find. He had a good game in his first, I think it was against Southampton away in the league, and then after then I didn't see enough from him. Coincidentally, he fell out the team. But we have to kind of remember just how well Jones played for the majority of December. He was, other than the performance at actually pretty much the 2 games where he played and Watmore wasn't in front of him, he looked a lot worse off, and we did talk about that on the site. Actually, would it affect him? I think it quite clearly did. But when you consider the injuries we've got, and we're thinking of midfield options here, I wouldn't be surprised to see Love play centre midfield, because he's done it for the under-23s enough for the last few months, and it's clearly a position I feel he can play, or he wouldn't be doing it. Maybe that's where you can shoehorn him into the team when Love's back. Billy Jones is back fit. Love maybe moves inside when Ndong goes to the Cup of Nations, and it gets both of them in the team really. But he's done enough certainly to keep his place. He's going to really want to play against Man United. Man United's his old club obviously, and he's going to want to prove a point and try and show why they should have kept a hold of him. I hope he doesn't get too carried away. But if he can put anything in, like the performance which he did on Saturday, he's going to do fine for the rest of the season for me, because he's got a bit of everything. He's good in the tackle. He works hard. His distribution's a lot better than I thought it was. I didn't know he had that in his locker. And if you can get him running beyond Barini, it could be a good partnership. Like we're talking about the left hand side, it could be something for us to work on down the right as well. So I was more than happy with him. I thought he was outstanding.
Barini likes to cut inside as well, doesn't he? So that would probably be ideal in that situation. Right, well, you mentioned injuries. Yeah, we have 9 current injuries, and we've also got some Twitter questions, because we're only 2 weeks off from the January transfer window. Now, Lee Charters asks, who do you think we will sell to raise funds? That's a very difficult question. I'm going to pitch it to James. What do you think?
To be fair, even if we do get any money for anyone, will that money then be made available? I think is the key question, isn't it? No, but if you think, as you said, we've got 9 first team players out injured: Jones, Kirchhoff, Mankillo, Pienaar, Watmore, Gooch, McNair, Catamore, Rodwell, plus Ndong, Kazri, Kone, and Djilobodji could all theoretically go to the African Cup of Nations. It leaves us drastically thin, doesn't it? He has to be given something to spend, whether that be just in terms of loan signings or not. We need to sign at least one midfielder, and I also think we need extra bodies up top. I said in previous podcasts, I think Peter Crouch would be perfect, but whether or not we've got the money for his wages is the key question. I certainly wouldn't want to cash in on Pickford just yet. I think keeping him in the team could be the difference between staying up. I think he could at least get us 6 points. He's such a talent. When you're looking at sellable assets, I think look no further than Wabi Kazri. He doesn't get in the team. He does have quality, but if Moyes clearly doesn't fancy him, if you can get 5 or 6 million, for him, and even if we could use half of that for incoming players, I mean, we really do need bodies. We really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got another question on that note from SAFC Dolphins. To give the club money, do we sell our top priced players? Obviously, you said we want to keep hold of Pickford and things like that. This is Pickford, Kone. I mean, just to add to that question, as was mentioned, how much money are we actually going to have? How much money is that going to bring us? We're only realistically, based on the news that came out recently, going to have the wages potentially to play with. So are we realistically? I think we're looking at maybe 2 loan signings, or rather 2 signings. Do you know what I mean? But potentially we wouldn't be able to get 2 loan signings, would we?
Problem is though, Damien, really that Moyes has said in the past he's very keen and build a young squad who are going to be here for a long time. I know you can't legislate entirely against. You can't always stick to that entirely when you're in a relegation scrap. And he's maybe got to look at players from outside of the country who are going to cost us a little bit less. But if it's loan signings, how many Premier League experienced good players are going to be available to come here on loan from foreign teams and things like that, you know? Because domestically, we've already used up, I believe, have we used any slots domestically in terms of loans?
Not domestically.
Yeah.
Well, that would be.
No, sorry,
Denayer and-
Januzaj.
yeah.
Denayer and
Denayer,
Januzaj. There we go.
Januzaj.
Sorry, yeah, of course. So there you go. There's two already used. So we can't sign anyone domestically on loan, I believe, unless we send someone back, which I doubt's going to happen. Even though it was touted about Januzaj, I think the fact he's starting games shows you what Moyes thinks of him. So yeah, that sign's going to have to come from abroad. Last year it was Domi and Doy, and I wouldn't be shocked to see that kind of level of player again. Somebody who's out in the sticks, who's not playing games, that might possibly be open to coming here on loan for a few months. That's probably about as good as it's going to get, and that's pretty depressing.
That's
Like,
damning,
because
isn't it?
I've said for ages, well, it is, and we're desperate for a central midfielder who can score goals. We're not only desperate for a central midfielder who can score goals, but we're desperate for another centre half. We're desperate for another left back. We're pretty desperate for another striker. We're not going to get all of those. So what we have to do is look at the one position which we really, really need a player, which for me is central midfield. When you consider that, like we said before, Kirchhoff, Pienaar is constantly injured. You've got Lyndon Gooch, you've got Mackems, Catamol, who are all long-term injuries, and then you've got Rodwell, who you can't rely on. We need a central midfield player that's going to add goals. Who that is, I haven't the foggiest. I'd speculated Charlie Adam a few weeks ago, but I don't think he's going anywhere. He's playing for Stoke fairly semi-regularly anyways. Again, it's hard to see who it's going to be. For me, it has to be somebody ready to play games, which is going to be, well, it's another facet of it, isn't it, really? Who's going to be available for loan, who's ready to play games. They're probably not going to be playing for that team. So it's a tough one. He's got to look at the kids. He's got to look at the kids, and he's got to look at the free agent market. And if any of them are any decent, any good, then we have to bring them in. It's as simple as that. There's only players like Raul Morales and stuff like that, still not without a contract, and you kind of look at it and thinking, well, who could you really bring in? There's nobody there for me.
He's just as injury prone as anyone, isn't he, Morales? And maybe look at someone from the MLS now they're in their off season. Maybe there's someone there you can bring in for a couple of months while people are out of the African nations. I think out of the players from the academy, I'd like to see more of the likes of Asoro and Maja. I don't know if they're ready yet, but Asoro, he seems to be a bright spark, and I don't know whereabouts he plays, whether he plays through the middle or maybe out wide. But
they haven't played on the right for the under 23s, but
he's quick.
Really, he's rapid, but you wouldn't trust him to start games. He doesn't look good from the start of games for the under 23s. Funnily,
Really?
what you'll see with Asoro is he always starts off the right because he's just not physical enough to play up front. He's tiny. I think he's only 17-year-old. You can tell he's very slight. He's very very raw. His decision making's not there, but he will crop up with goals. He tends to score 1 and 2 for the under 23s. So you could look at a player like that and maybe introduce him from the bench, but he's not going to be starting games. Yeah, pretty much. He's got real ability. He's got a goal in him when you know a bit of that shock factor. Well, not a lot of players have got, where they'll just come up with something out and out. That could be handy from the bench late in games. But the problem is, I don't think Moyes is that experimentative. He likes to be safe, as we saw at the weekend. O'Shea coming on for Januzaj. And also, you've got to kind of consider his age. Is he ready to be playing in the Premier League yet? Is he better off staying with the under 23s for a year? Maja looks a prospect. He's pretty handy. He works hard. He's started scoring more goals recently. He wasn't scoring very often at the start of the season. He started chipping in, but when you watch him play, he's all over the pitch. He's trying to win. He's not like an Ichibi in any sense, really. He's far too young and a lot smaller, but he does work a lot off the ball and kind of occupies defenders. So I can see why he's been earmarked, because him and Soro were on the bench against midweek against Chelsea. But the rest of the under 23 squad, it's pretty difficult to see who you could consider as ready. If we're going to play with a number 10, then Honeyman would be ideal. He's so ready. He's 22-year-old. He's been there too long now. If he's not ready to step up now, they're going to sell him. And there was rumours he was going to be allowed to leave, which is a shame, really, because for me, out of him, Watmore and Gooch, he's probably the one with the most ability. He's just a little bit smaller than the other two. and he might struggle in the Premier League, which is why he hasn't given a shot yet. But when you watch him for the under-23s, he looks like the old experienced pro run the games. So we do have options in the kids. The problem is, I think Moyes isn't. I know he's gave a lot of kids that this season, but I think at this stage now, I don't think he's going to be willing to just throw people in. I think he's pretty happy with what he's got, and if he can maybe just the fact he won't play Khazri is indicative of that. Khazri gets minutes here and there when really you could see he's worth a lot more to the team than that. So if that's what he considers Wabi Khazri to be to him, then what does he consider the kids?
Well, mentioning Wabi Khazri, I mean, as you say, he barely gets brought on at all. He got a few minutes out of just pity, I suppose, from Moyes or something like that. There's no real need to do it, run down the clock and all that jazz, but it's not going to be beneficial to him, and he's not going to add anything in those few minutes. But there's no putting him in the shop window before January, is there? There's no giving him as much time as possible to raise his value or anything like that. So is it fair to say that Khazri won't be going anywhere in January? He won't be one of those we're looking to get rid of, or is there a deal already in place? I mean, obviously just speculation, but is that something to do with the relationship between Moyes and Khazri?
I wouldn't be surprised to see Khazri go back to another French club, because he was highly thought of around that January when we originally purchased him. And I just wouldn't be surprised if some French clubs are still interested in bringing him back over there. And that may just be our only real sale from a player in our current squad. Otherwise, unless we can find a means of potentially selling the players we currently have on loan right now, such as Lenz and Quartes. But aside from that, I can't really see anybody else from our squad at the moment being sold, especially considering that, when we originally said how Moyes had taken Allardyce's team and made it worse and weaker, and yet that team now has gone on to win 3 home games in 4. It looks like we're on the up. I can't see anything going anywhere, and that includes Konya as well. So, I'd imagine Khazri would be the one to go, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to a French club.
Yeah, well, that would be, I don't know if that would be a good or bad thing. Obviously, some people think quite highly of him, but if he's not getting the game time and Moyes isn't prepared to use him, then maybe that's an option. Now, obviously, we look forward to Boxing Day. We look forward to the day when Christmas is finally over and everyone can finally relax and try and build up their bank balances again. But also, we've got Manchester United. Now, what do you think of Man U right now, Tom? Do you think they're beatable?
No. I think they're going back to that annoying stage that we've missed for the past 3 or 4 years, where they're looking like, unfortunately, they're looking ominously good again. They're just now kind of like I only noticed today that Ibrahimovic has scored something daft, like 11 Premier League goals, that just kind of just escaped me grasp. And they're looking like a team that has spent 250 million on players in the past couple of seasons. And yeah, it's going to be like maybe last season you think we'd go to Old Trafford and you'd be quite quietly confident of getting something, but I can't see anything else but a Christmas shoe-in.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there. I think if it's a pretty harmless defeat, like the Chelsea one was, where for much of it we did ourselves justice and kind of kept the score down effectively. If that's what happens, then I can live with that. Especially with Burnley on the horizon, I think although Burnley's home form is superb. I don't see why we couldn't go there and win them. They're not that good. So anything we can get from this game is a bonus. And I know that's a bit of a cliche these days, but it really is the case. I think when you look at how well Ibra's playing, we can't keep a settled team together. Who knows who's going to be injured by Boxing Day? That's the way it feels at the minute. So if we can go there and we just do ourselves proud and turn up, then I think people will settle with that. They did when we did it at Liverpool. For 80 minutes of the game, we were in it, defended very deep, but we're in it, and we conceded the game. If we do that again on Boxing Day, then there can be no complaints, really.
Yeah, the thing with United is they certainly have picked up in form, but if we do manage to do what we did at Liverpool and keep it tight for the first half or so, that crowd will turn, because they're all tourists. There's barely any actual fans at Old Trafford anymore. So, I reckon we can get something from it. I think we'll get a point. I think Kone will have a swift elbow to the back of Ibrahimovic's head in the first couple of minutes and he'll go hiding. I'm going to say 1-1, mate.
What do you think?
Honestly, I think we're going to see another G against Man City moment. I think we're going to get a 1-0 win out of it.
Well,
I think Moyes has slowly but surely started to build up that defensive, approach so much now that he's found the balance between getting enough attack and play out there, but still maintaining a good defensive shape, which is something we didn't have at the start of the season. I think he's started to suss out how this team's going to operate now, and if we hold them out, I was saying earlier, for a good 80 minutes. Man United are not Liverpool. They don't have the patience to keep coming at us. I can see us nicking this one.
With that on the basis, not purely on the basis, but quite a lot on the basis of Jose Mourinho. I mean, he's always at his most flustered when he's been forced to deal with a defensive team for 90 minutes. Do you know what I mean? He feels hard done by that, and I don't think he's set up to deal with the team who show up defensively. Was it Conte that said before the Chelsea game, we were the most informed team in the Premier League at the time? Do you know what I mean? And obviously Klopp turned round about us and said he's never seen anyone play so defensively. I think we do give these teams a hard time, particularly the ones with any kind of flair. And I think Kone and Papy Djilobodji will just be able to deal with Ibrahimovic with no issues. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So if I was to give a prediction, I would say something like 2-1 Sunderland. What about you, Gav?
Christ, what have you been on the night? Go on then. 1-0. Sod it. Christmas.
Tom, prediction, man?
Oh, sorry, I'm just comprehending all this positive attitude. Flipping heck. I'd say a spirited 2-0 defeat.
2-0 defeat. Well, I look forward. That's the spirit.
Is there such a thing?
Lads. Right, yeah.
Christmas spirit.
Right, yeah. Well, that's it. That's all from us until just after Christmas. Do enjoy yourselves. Be merry. From all the lads at the Roker Rapport. Don't forget, you can subscribe to us on iTunes or you can use the Acast app. And this is the Rapport signing off. Merry Christmas.